Welcome back to part 2 of the Scotch Rite Masonry illustrated that we were reviewing. We're going to start where we left off. In the historical analysis of the 4th and 5th degrees, pages 59 to 68 and 89 to 92 of this volume, this particular book, right? Volume 1, will be found quotations from Mackey, McCoy, Rebold, Folger and Morris, whose authority as Masonic writers is unquestioned and ample proof of the fact that the Scottish Rite had its origin in the brains and breasts of an apostate Presbyterian, renegade tyrants, etc., but its hatred of Christ associated with Jesuits conspiring against the liberties of Europe and for the overthrow of the government of France. And its first home in this country was the city of nullification, secession and rebellion in Charleston, South Carolina, USA in 1801, where 13 of these particular people and 3 Protestants, Mitchell, Dalcho and Provost, who had received it from France, falsely pretended to found it on constitutions given by Frederick the Great. We've already revealed that. If Satan had picked the time, the inventors and home of this rite, he would have doubtless chosen the same. French principles prevailed. Jefferson was first inaugurated, having defeated John Adams in 1801. That's Thomas Jefferson for the presidency, the year when the Charleston Council was born. Aaron Burr, who came near defeating Jefferson, was plotted to divide the infant Union. They're very small at that time. It hadn't grown large yet. Raising troops in the southwest, and both Barnard and Gassett say he used the Royal Arch cipher to cover his treason, for which Jefferson afterwards tried him. Put him to trial, probably. Moran's Jews with Mitchell and Dalcho that same year, 1801, took Ramsay and his Jesuits' rites of perfection, added 8 degrees, made it the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, and sent it back to France, where the survivors of the Reign of Terror received it, and today it rules European Masonry. As early as 1796, while John Jay was governor, Colonel Burr had various conversations with him on the subject of these Mexican provinces. Colonel Burr said he could revolutionise and take possession of South America. Burr was actively engaged during the years 1805 to 6 in traversing the western country. Previous to the cession of Louisiana, Baron Bastrop contracted with the Spanish government for land near Natchitoches, exceeding 30 miles square. The Spanish government granted to Bastrop 1,200,000 acres. Colonel Lynch paid Bastrop about $100,000 for a 16th of it, and Burr paid Lynch $50,000 for half of Lynch's purchase. General Wilkinson detailed to Burr the facilities which would probably be afforded by the inhabitants in effecting a revolution. Burr writes to his daughter, August 1805, "I have now 150 miles of wilderness to encounter." Colonel Burr was arrested as a traitor on the Tombigbee River, Mississippi Territory. The above excerpts are taken from Memoirs of Aaron Burr by his friend M. L. Davis, promiscuously, pages 374 to 383, volume 2, and they prove 1. That Burr's object in raising troops with Blennerhassett was the disruption of the Union, or the armies of the North, and a slave empire south and west of the Mississippi, to include Mexico and Central America, then belonging to Spain. For this he was tried for his life, but acquitted for want of overt treasonable acts. Before his trial, we read in the Memoirs, page 383, a letter was delivered by Swart out to General Wilkinson, written in cipher. Barnard and Gassett say it was in Royal Arch cipher, and as Burr had been on the staff of Benedict Arnold, a Mason and a traitor, these facts further furnish probable proof that Burr's conspiracy was a Masonic conspiracy. But the crowning proof is this: by universal Masonic law, but one supreme body can be in one nation. But the Charleston Supreme Council made the United States the sole exception. In 1813, 12 years from its origin, he created a Supreme Council, northern jurisdiction located at New York, limited to the states north of the Ohio and east of the Mississippi. The very division contemplated by Burr and afterwards attempted by the Jefferson Davis and Alexander H. Stevens Confederacy by repealing the Missouri Compromise, and in Stevens' words, attempting an empire whose cornerstone is slavery. But for Jefferson's patriotism and Jackson's courage and decision, the attempt would have been made
years before by Calhoun's notification. Indeed, the hopes and predictions of monarchists, papists and anarchists of Europe from the first were that the United States would split on the Ohio and Mississippi, shut off New England and its principles between the Atlantic, St. Lawrence, Mississippi and Ohio, and leave the whole vast South and West, its soil, climate and mines, to slavery, the lodge, the priest and the mob. Now, considering that the Charleston Supreme Council Masonically divided our Union, or the US Union, in 1813, by these very lines, considering that Aaron Burr, using the Masonic cipher, was attempting precisely the same rending of the Union at the same time, considering that afterwards the Union was read by the Lodge Room conspiracies of the South, considering that the Congress upheld slavery till Lincoln took the helm, and Seward, Sumner, Wilson, Stevens, Stanton and Chase, all of whom were anti-Masons, controlled Congress, and considered that the war was a failure till Grant took the sword, who left his dying testimony against the Lodge, and above all considering that the ecclesiastical despot and master of Jesuits at Rome was the only European power which reached his arm across the Atlantic to recognise the rebellion and rend the Union, or try to quell the Union, get rid of it, or break it apart. And laying all these considerations together, that mind must be weak, ignorant or worse, which does not see in that Charleston Supreme Council of 1801 and its ancient and accepted Scottish Rite a devil's government with a devil's gospel, and in the subterranean lodges sprang from it, in the strong words of Lamartine, the catacombs of a new worship, which worship was that of a naked woman, a goddess of reason, in the Champ de Mars, if you're French I suppose, a religion which Frenchmen shuddered to remember, which filled France with terror and bathed it in blood. But was not General Jackson a Mason? And were not all his cabinet honorary members of Federal Lodge in the city of Washington? Answer: this is all true. But Jackson firmly believed in Christ, to whom he humbly professed conversion before he died, and he was a firm believer in the Union. And though ignorant in many respects, he was fearless and faithful to the government, and regretted that he had not hung John C. Calhoun for attempting its dissolution. While Livingston, his Secretary of State, was a champion of the Lodge, and Poinsett, by introducing a new rite into Mexico, caused a series of bloody revolutions in an unhappy country. Of the Masons in the United States, it has been estimated that only 1 in 5 habitually attend Lodge meetings, and the Lodges are mainly supported by the 4/5 who are non-attenders, who pay dues to avoid Lodge vengeance. As a rule, the 1/5 who attend the meetings share the income among themselves, while the absentees pay it. There are, however, exceptions. A physician had charge of the post hospital near Little Rock, Arkansas, USA. An orderly had arrested a rebel who had murdered his Union neighbour, robbing him of $2,000. The physician was a high Mason, and one day the rebel robber and murderer called on the doctor for a private interview on the square when the following dialogue took place. Rebel: Doctor, I am complicated in this murder case and am arrested by the orderly. Can you help me? Doctor: Well, did you kill him? Rebel: Yes. Doctor: Well, did you get the $2,000? Rebel: Yes. Doctor: Well, what do you expect of me? Rebel: That you will aid in extricating me according to our obligations as Masons. Doctor: You infamous puppy, you. If you expect me to make such a use of my Masonry, for once you have mistaken your man. I will endeavour to be up to Little Rock at your hearing and have a word to say. The orderly took the rebel up to Little Rock, and Masonic Union officers cleared him. The rebel was a true Mason. The surgeon was a patriot. Like instances to this are at hand which would fill a moderate volume. There were Masons and Roman Catholics who were good men and patriots, as there were in the New Testament pagan centurions who received Christ, but neither the Lodge or the confessional is Christian or American. We have seen that from its history given by its own authors, that this ancient and accepted Scottish Rite is not ancient but modern, not accepted but invented, not Scottish but French, and so one continuous falsehood. But its most revolting features are yet to be drawn or revealed. Destroying records is confessing crime. Its writers complain that the early English Lodge records were destroyed, doubtless lest their secret proceedings should be brought into the courts. But the Charleston Supreme Council destroyed its proceedings for more than half a century. From 1801 to 1860, no records exist. In his address before his council in 1878, Albert Pike said, I am often asked why we do not publish our old transactions, to which I am compelled to reply that we have none to publish. We have no records of the transactions at Charleston from 1801 to 1860. What minutes we had were destroyed during the war. The above is taken from the speech of Edwards, Commander-in-Chief of the Minnesota Grand Consistory, November 12, 1885. Those records covered the period of nullification and the rise of the rebellion, and were doubtless ghastly with treason, with attempts to burn down northern cities and poison inhabitants, for such things were attempted. But the records of the Northern Council were preserved, and its historian Folger says it is to be regretted that from its very commencement its progress in this country, the USA, has been marked with bitter contentions and constant quarrels. Folger, page 15. These quarrels have most of them arisen between the old York Rite of 3 degrees and the French Jesuit degrees, which have finally conquered and swallowed the less vicious Blue Lodge, which was first opened in this country in the US in Boston in 1833. In New England, the whole secret lodge was looked on with loathing and abhorrence. They detested it. The grandfather of Dr. Richard Storrs of Braintree, Massachusetts, and Dr. Williston of East Haven had a saying, "A Freemason is hand in hand with the devil." Dr. Hopkins of Newport, R.I., in Dr. E.A. Park's Memoir of Emmons, says the lodge belongs to the kingdom of Satan. Later, the whole Andover faculty, Wood, Stewart, and Emerson, denounced it in unmeasured terms. The ground idea of congregationalism, since Bradshaw, rejects as unlawful all rites not enjoined by the Word of God, which includes lodges, which are inventions of men, and a full 500,000 of Christians in order and other denominations regard secret lodges as synagogues of Satan to be disfellowshipped by the children of God. A careful reading of the analysis of the degrees of this rite will convince all candid minds that there are the abominations and demon worship of the Scriptures which prevent the coming of Christ. Chapter 2. Lodge of Perfection, composed of 11 degrees termed the ineffable degrees, and comprising the 4th to the 14th degrees as follows: 4th degree, Secret Master; 5th, Perfect Master; 6th, Intimate Secretary; 7th, Provost and Judge; 8th, Intendant of the building; 9th, Elected Knights of the Nine. Note 1. In 1754, the Chevalier de Bonneville established a chapter of the high degrees at Paris in the College of Jesuits of Clermont, hence called the Chapter of Clermont. The system of Masonry there practiced received the name of the Rite of Perfection, or Rite of Herodom. The College of Clermont was, says Ribault History, GL 46, the asylum of the adherents of the House of Stuart, and hence the rite is to some extent tinctured with Stuart Masonry, or littered with it. It hints at having Stuart invented Masonry. If consisted of 20 secret masters, 5 perfect master. Here we go. Here's all this list here. It consisted of 25 degrees as follows: 1 apprentice, 2 fellow craft, 3 master, 4 secret master, 5 perfect master, 6 intimate secretary, 7 intendant of the building, 8 provost and judge, 9 elect of 9, 10 elect of 15, 11 illustrious elect, chief of the 12 tribes, 12 grand master, architect, 13 royal arch, 14 grand elect, ancient perfect master and knights of the sword, 16 prince of Jerusalem, 17 knight of the east, and so forth. Illustrious sovereign prince of masonry, grand knight, number 25, right? Sublime commander of the royal secret. It will be seen that the degrees of this rite are the same as those of the Council of Emperors of the East and West, which was established 4 years later, and to which the chapter of Clermont was established 4 years later, and to which the chapter of Clermont gave way. Of course, they are therefore the same so far as they go as those of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, which succeeded the Council of Emperors. The distinguishing principle of this rite is that Freemason was derived from Templarism, and that consequently every Freemason was a Knight Templar. It was there that the Baron von Hund was initiated, and from it, through him, preceded the rite of strict observances, although he discarded the degrees and retained only the Templar theory. Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Article Perfection, Rite of. Yes, that's the Rite of Freemasonry, Article Perfection, by the looks of it. And there's some more details here. In the temple, every lodge of the Scottish Rite is divided into two portions by means of a balustrade or railing running north and south. This railing has a gate. The flooring of the east end of the lodge inside the railing and gate is elevated 1 or 2 feet above that of the west. The walls are adorned by a representation of 12 columns. At the door of the lodge is a brazen layer. There are elevated seats and desks for each of the following officers. Note 2. The Freemasons have at all events seized with avidity the idea of representing in their symbolic language the interior and spiritual man by a material temple. They have the doctrine of the great apostle of the Gentiles, who has said, "Know ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you." The great body of the Masonic craft, looking only to this first temple erected by the wisdom of King Solomon, make it the symbol of life. And as the great object of Masonry is the search after truth, they are directed to build up this temple as a fitting receptacle for truth when found, the place where it may dwell. Just as the ancient Jews built up the great temple as a dwelling place for him who is the author of all truth, or the Creator God. Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Article Temple Symbolism of the, which corresponds with the sun, moon, earth, and 5 visible planets and so forth. It's so basically what the temple looks like, according to this volume. 4th or secret master's degree. Information on that. This grade originated with King Solomon about the time the temple was completed or shortly after. He selected 7 of the most worthy and expert brethren from the craft and appointed them guards of the sanctum sanctorum and the sacred furniture of the holy place. They were called secret masters, and in due time were advanced to higher grades, and others selected to fill their places. The ritual is replete with valuable and interesting details relative to the mystic meaning of the sacred furniture and ornaments of the sanctum sanctorium. The ceremonies of initiation are solemn and impressive, and it forms a beautiful introductory to the ineffable series. This lodge must be hung in black and strewed with white tears. The master represents Solomon and is styled most powerful, who comes to the temple to replace the loss of Hiram Abef by 7 experts. There is only one warden who is called Adoniram. It was him who had the inspection of this workmanship at Mount Lebanon, who was the first secret master, and so forth. And there's some notes on it. Opening ceremonies and illustrated pictures. These are the rites that they perform within that temple. Chapter 4, 4th or secret master's degrees, initiation, preparation of candidate. Obligation and secret master's degree, music dirge. And it continues with the detailing the rites. The initials of the names you'd see in the 9 beams of the Shekinah are those which God gave himself when he spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, intimating to him at the same time that his future issue should one day know his real name. This author now endeavours to give them, or strives to give them, to the reader or the members with their explanations. Adonai, signifying Supreme Lord. Jehovah, Elohim, Supreme Judge. Als, powerful Shaddai, omnipotent. Zebrath, Lord of Hosts, Ozi, mightiness. Gabor strength are had only one. These compose 88 letters and 72 names, which are like the ineffable name to be found in the mysteries of the Kabbalah and the angels' alphabet, and so forth. And here's some notes. Note 20. One of the names of God in Exodus. I'm not too sure what that is. The word translated God Almighty is in the original Shaddai. That's the original Hebrew. It is therefore the name by which he was known to the Israelites before he communicated to Moses the Tetragrammaton. The word is a pluralis majesticus and signifies all-powerful, omnipotent. Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, article Shaddai. Okay, in Exodus, his name was, that was given to Moses, was Ahia Asher Hia. I am the I am. Okay. Note 21. Note 22. Got the first degree. The cover of the Ark of the Covenant, had a name which was called propitiatory, or place that served to appease God's anger. Said propitiatory contained the testimony which God gave to Moses, the tablets of the law. Said tablets were of white marble and contained the Decalogue written in Hebrew characters. The commandments taught and were disposed of on the tablets as follows. He goes into great detail about that. Closing ceremony, secret master's degree, historical analysis, fourth or secret master's degree, how Masonry got its title of the royal art, lodgery and popery, overthrow Cromwell's Commonwealth, similarity of Masonic jugglery and priestcraft, and so forth. The Stuart dynasty had fallen the stream of English popular liberty from an incipient jury trial under Alfred through Magna Carta or Charter under John, and the overthrow of priests and monasteries by Henry VIII, had flowed steadily onward, but it had met an ice gorge in the House of Stuart, the meanest of monarchs and of men. But the dam was broken and the stream rushed on. Charles I had been beheaded for treason to his people, 1649. His son Charles II was driven into exile into France, but being a secret papist, he joined the Freemasons and regained his throne by the secret union of French papists and English Masons, Protestants. Right? This gave to the Masonry the title of the Royal Arts. Hume's England 2, 606 and rebold, page 54. His brother James II, an open papist, reigned 3 years as a weak despot, then threw the mace into the Thames and fled from his throne and people to the French monarch, the eldest son of the Roman Church. The French wags called him the simpleton who lost 3 kingdoms for a mass. This weak Stuart, like his brother Charles, was accepted as a Mason, took up his headquarters at the Jesuits College of Claremont, and for a while plotted to regain his throne, but died 13 years after his abdication, 1688, at the Palace of Saint Germain in 1701. His son, the young pretender, Charles Edward, followed his father and grandfather into the lodge, became Grand Master of the chapter of Herodom, Mackay Encyclopedia, article Stuart Masonry, and by the same of charters to French and English and Irish Masons, with aid from the French monarch, raised means to invade England by way of Scotland. But the Protestant throne of William and Mary stood firm and still stands in spite of popery and the lodge. But by restoring the second Charles and overthrowing Cromwell's Commonwealth, the twin evils, popery and lodgery, put back public morals and popular liberty in England a full century. Both are unmitigated despotisms, both set up a false standard of morals, and both set aside Christ. Masonry promises to save men by its jugglery, and popery sends men for salvation, not to Christ, but to a priest. But how can this be, since in 1738 Pope Clement XII issued his papal bull against the Freemasons, and its authority continues in force at that time, right? And it had been endorsed by popes since, and enforced by councils and priests. Answers. The question is not how it can be, but it is true that the higher degrees of Masonry are of Papist origin. This must be settled by proof. The world knows that James II, a declared Papist, fled to France in 1688, where he died 2 years afterward. Leading says after his flight to France and during his residence at the Jesuit College of Clermont, his adherents, or his followers, among whom were the Jesuits, fabricated certain degrees with the design of carrying out their political views. So they invented them, and he claimed them as given by probably Frederick the Great or somebody like that, or somebody else. This is taken from Mackey's encyclopedia article Stuart Masonry, and there is no higher Masonic authority. Another standard Masonic author, McCoy, something article Scotch Rite, says the degrees of this rite are for the most part fabricated from the system invented by Ramsay. This Ramsay, a brilliant young Scotchman, apostatizing to popery. Apostatized to popery. He was 20 years old when James II fled to France. Ramsay followed him and became tutor to his sons. He became also an instrument of the Jesuits. Rebold General History, or that Generational History, page 161. In adding upper degrees to simple York Masonry, and so to draw English Masons into a conspiracy to overturn the throne of William and Mary and bring in despotism and the Stuarts. Having amassed a large fortune by his Scotch thrift, royal patronage, and the sale of Masonic rights and dignities, he offered to enrich his relatives in Scotland, doubtless hoping to draw them into his Stuart Masonry along with the Jesuits, but they scorned him and rejected his proffered wealth. He then tried to introduce his masonry into England, but was repulsed, went back to France and died at Pointe-Toise, whatever that is in French, in 1743. See his life in Mackey's Encyclopedia. Thus it is proven that the first higher degrees of Masonry were invented. They were invented by French Jesuits and their instruments, their adherents. And thus is explained, or the tools that they used, people they used. And thus is explained how it can be that popery can at once prohibit and permit the lodge. As with Jesuits, the end sanctifies the means. Masonry is right when seeking to enthrone popery, and wrong when its oaths of secrecy interfere with the confessional and its dues diminish Peter's pence. But the point is proved, if history can prove anything, that the higher degrees of Masonry, so-called, are of Papist origin, invented by Jesuits to destroy Protestantism and popular liberty in Europe, and thus is fulfilled the symbolic prophecy of Revelation 13th chapter. The first beast being Rome, pagan, and the second Rome, papal, and the secret lodge system is a shadowy image of the iron despotism of Rome, made by them that dwell on the earth promiscuously, not by churchmen or any one nationality, but by everybody at large, civilized, barbarous, and savage, as we see at the present day. American Masons are not ashamed to boast that barbarians are their brethren, and that their lodge religion is the natural religion of mankind, thus annihilating the Christian religion and ignoring Christian civilization. The names given by the French to their higher orders are Popish. Chapter, Templar, Knight, Council are all Popish names, first invented by priests, while the image outdoes the beasts themselves, pagan and papal Rome, and the grandiloquence of its titles and the garnishness of its regalia. But the identity of these religions of Antichrist is not merely outward, but inward and moral, the chief elements being secrecy and despotism. September 27th, 1540, Pope Paul III established the Society of Jesus, called Jesuits. God has said, Isaiah 48:16, I have not spoken in secret from the beginning, and Christ repeated, in secret have I said nothing. That's it. Is it supposed to be John 18:20? Not sure what that is. It just says JNO. Maybe it's journal number. Not really sure. The secrecy of the, unless that's, I'm not really sure what that is. Jesuit number 1820, not really sure what it is. The secrecy of the, it looks like it's scripture. Okay, not sure. It might be John. The secrecy of the Jesuit Secreta Monita was impenetrable, and Lefebvre, when told he would die if he attempted to travel, as he was ordered to do, answered, "It is not necessary that I should live, but it is necessary I should obey." He went and died. These two pillars in the temple of Antichrist, secrecy and subjection, appear in every stronghold of the devil on earth, from the Vatican to the Pura in an African bush. We require, said Powderly, secrecy and obedience. Wherever these are, however flitting and wavering, there is an image of the beast. But Ramsay boldly copied the lineaments of the beast. We read, he endeavoured to obviate the objections of the French nobility to the mechanical origin, stonemasons, of the institution Masonry, by asserting that it arose in the Holy Land during the Crusades. McCoy article on Ramsay. That this origin of Masonry was known to be false made no difference. Degrees, chapters and rites sprung up by thousands and spread like pestilence, like a disease, until the swindle was likely to fail by its cheapness, and the religion imposture by its insipidity, they say that, insipidity, dispensing with Christ. Then began the struggle to condense, stratify and monopolise. Ramsay made a rite of 6 degrees. Each adventurer strove to overtop, charter, tax and govern all others. Make them pay, right? In 758, the struggle produced at Paris a council of emperors of the East and West. Its adepts styled themselves sovereign prince masons, substitutes general of the royal art, grand superintendents and officers of the Grand and Sovereign Lodge of St. John of Jerusalem. Its rites consisted of 25 degrees. McCoy, page 138. 4 years previous, de Bonneville had instituted a rite of perfection in the Jesuit college containing the same 25 degrees, but this rite of perfection was merged in the Council of Emperors of the East and West. Mackey Encyclopedia. No reason for the merging is given. 4 years after its origin, in 1761, this Council of Emperors empowered a Jew named Stephen Moran, who was coming to America to act as Inspector General of all the higher lodges of Masonry in the New World. His commission ran, "We do recognise our dearest brother Stephen Moran as a Grand Master Inspector to establish perfect and sublime Masonry in every part of the world." Folger's History of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite, page 31, documents. This person came via San Domingo, we've already covered this, it's like a review of it again, to Charleston, SC, and finding that it paid established a lodge of Inspector Generals. Money was given by the looks of it to create a lodge of Inspectors General. Of the first 16 inspectors whom he appointed, 13 were Jews, as was Moran himself. The 3 who were not Jews were Colonel John Mitchell, Colonel Provost, and Dr. Frederick Dalcho. Folger's History, page 38. And Folger adds, same page, if history speaks correctly, Moran and his coadjutors or justice found manufacturing Masonic degrees and the sale of Masonic dignities a very profitable and lucrative undertaking. We've already read that before. Okay. Whoever carefully reads this sketch will find cause for astonishment and dread. This French Masonry, falsely called Scotch or Scottish, is a religious pestilence or disease or virus, spreading over the most enlightened nations on the globe. It takes its name from clubs of stonemasons who imitated their apprentices, journeymen and master masons. 4 of these clubs at a London tavern in 1717 dropped stonemasonry, accepted all who would pay, started a religion to fit men for heaven without Christ, and thenceforth it took its stand with the false religions of the world, based on lying legends, secrecy, mystery and show. Here the Jesuits took it up, as seen above, to destroy the free agency of men in religion by sworn obedience to unknown superiors. The Jesuits had existed since 1540 by the same principle of secrecy and abject submission, and so blended readily with the London Lodge. Okay, so we have read years ago the translation of the French Jesuit manual, like an instruction manual, that they basically trained up people who would then infiltrate churches, etc., and give a whole lot of false information, try to turn each other upon each other, basically destroy it from within with these false teachings, etc., etc., these false information, etc. So there are Judases amongst all the Christian churches. Okay, and it goes on about information we've already covered. Okay, and asks here, what is the true meaning and import of this travesty of methods long since laid aside by which God brought our race, while ignorant as grown up babes, to reverence and obey a pure law and to trust in the sacrifice of Christ? The meaning and intent of this vile counterfeit, considered as a device of Satan, is 1. To indurate and harden the human heart by practicing religious ceremonies without any religion. Nothing hardens men like this. 2. To put and keep men in the attitude of receptivity to spirit influence. The whole lodge ceremony is a prolonged prayer to the devil. So, spirit meaning demonic. 3. To keep the mind busy while the heart grows hard, as in bead counting, genuflections and crossings in the Romish church and in the endless ceremonies of paganism. 4. To keep the masses stupid while the cunning manage them. Thus this 4th grade of the present universal masonry and the 29 degrees to follow, as Dr. Drumming has said of the papacy, is one stupendous demoniacal possession. So there is part 2, revealing the Jesuit, the French false Scottish Rites and their agenda, their motives, their agenda and their wickedness behind the scenes. So if you found this video very interesting, then subscribe to our channel, give us a like for bringing it to you, add your comments below this video, we'll get back to you as soon as we can on those, and then go share this with people out there who think it's all a conspiracy, they're all evil. Okay, by the looks of it, there was the one original Freemasonry that included Christ. We've done videos on this before. It looks like a King James Version Bible, but it has the Freemasonic compass, etc. on the cover. We have a big thick version of the 1611 or later revised King James Version here somewhere. Looks very similar. So hopefully this has opened your eyes to, as we just said, there was the let's say good practice of Freemasonry infiltrated by a certain party or parties, and everything was twisted. They invented and added degrees, etc. by their own volition, claiming that it was endorsed by Frederick the Great, etc., etc., when it wasn't. They're just basically a group of liars worshipping the devil in some. So again, if you like that we put this to your attention, subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments below the video, and then share this with all those you know.